Expertise is so easily gained these days. Have you noticed that? Something happens in the world of politics, something happens halfway around the world, all of a sudden everyone's a geopolitical expert. And in our world, everyone's an expert on sign stealing now. You see this cup in front of me, by the way. If you're listening on podcast, does that sound like a chalice? It does not. The chalice is dutifully parked off to my left, but this is just a pure black coffee kind of show that we have in front of us. You know, the kind that detectives drink. We are jam-packed high atop a very suspicious downtown Nashville, Tennessee. It's Tuesday, October 24th, the year of our Lord, 2023. What is happening at Michigan? How much trouble is Michigan in? Could this be a big nothing burger? Buzz phrase of the decade, nothing burger. Well, we will dissect this tonight. I will give you several thoughts because I have some. I think maybe some that haven't been packaged up and presented, at least the way that I'm seeing it, elsewhere. So I'm going to talk about that. You, of course, know it's Tuesday night. That means it is full-on Week 9 prediction time. We got several big games to break down. I got, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 chaos teams to talk to you about. And also, there's this big story, not the Michigan story. No, there's this big story bubbling right now. And I've talked to you about it in different shapes and forms for the entirety of the time I've been here. And it's happening right before our eyes. And because so much is happening and everyone's distracted, no one's talking about it, couldn't be us. Like Paper Pop City later in the show, because we got some things happening that are shaping the sport. And I don't want you to be unaware. They're watching us in Shippensburg, PA, Parrish, Florida, Addison, Alabama, Queenstown, New Zealand. Thank you so much. Make sure, because I didn't remind you last show, make sure you're following on the socials, at Late Kick Josh. We got some great stuff coming up this weekend, especially over on Instagram. Friday Night Lines, of course, brought to you by FanDuel, exclusively presented by FanDuel now. Friday Night Lines will emanate from a hotel room somewhere down in Jacksonville, but also, guys, if you want behind-the-scenes access, I'm on the sideline every Saturday. I'm outside the locker rooms. I'm there when teams get off the bus. I'm on the field before they go live with the broadcast. I get you stuff you don't see anywhere else. I have nothing else to do. Why not? And it's in the Instagram story. Literally every Saturday. It's just loaded up with stuff and vantage points that you wouldn't get anywhere else. Because I used to always want that. I used to watch pro wrestling, and all I wanted to do was see behind the curtain. And in college football, I know you get to see what's on the broadcast, but you want to see a little bit more. Well, that Instagram story is where to find it. At Late Kick Josh. Okay, here we go. Let's dive in. Take the sip of black coffee. Nope, not from the chalice, just from a garden variety cup we had in the kitchen. So, what you think? Of course, by that I mean what you think about this Michigan thing. Colin, don't include that. Here's your endpoint. Michigan is at the center of the college football world for all the wrong reasons right now. Well, I guess not all wrong reasons. They happen to be number one in the country in the JP poll coming later tonight, but also, what's going to happen with Michigan? I know some of you have gathered bits and pieces of this story. Here's like a little 20-second version. Michigan is being accused of illegally stealing other teams' signs. Now, everyone does it. You're going to hear people say that every day the rest of this investigation. Well, everybody does this. Everybody doesn't buy tickets to go scout teams and record the opposing sideline via iPhone in the stands. No, everyone doesn't do that. So that's what they're accused of. That is illegal. You cannot do that. Well, it's against the NCAA bylaw, at least. You can't do that. And we've had a lot of reporting on it. Dellinger and company have had stuff. Pete Thamel just put something new out on ESPN.com a little while ago. So my current stance on this has been a really funny thing because my current stance has both sides thinking I've got their back. I got Michigan folks, when they hear what I have to say, saying, thank you so much. And I'm like, what do you think? I just absolved you? And then the other side, we got basically every other Big Ten fan base with a torch in one hand and a pitchfork in the other, thinking I'm also agreeing with them that death is on the doorstep of Michigan athletics. And so let me just tell you what I think, and I will go over several details here. Okay, so ESPN's Pete Thamel, just the latest reporting on this as of the last hour. The NCAA is being presented evidence by several Big Ten schools that Connor Stallions, who is the somewhat shady character at the center of this investigation from Michigan, Connor Stallions bought tickets for 35 or more games at 17 different schools. Now, the big news later this afternoon that was reported was this is not just within the Big Ten anymore. There are schools outside the Big Ten that Michigan perhaps was going to play. Think Clemson, for example. Think, other teams that they may have faced in the college football playoff that this dude was also buying tickets to games of. And the entire premise is you buy tickets, you put whoever you're going to put in those seats. They take their fancy phone and they zoom in on the other side, and they just record the sideline. All right, now what does that lead to? It leads to an unfair advantage, and therefore it's banned. You can't do it. You can't use electronics to be gathering signals, and you especially can't be planting people in the stadiums that feature teams you're going to play in the future. Like, if you are not caught up already, that's what's going on. So, nose itches. So, anytime there's a scandal in major college athletics these days, you get hot Twitter evidence. I don't call it X yet. So you get hot Twitter evidence. Jesse, do we have the latest hot Twitter evidence that's making its rounds today? So this is footage from field level of Ohio State playing Michigan last year. And you see Ohio State's checking out of a play, and Michigan's looking to the sidelines. And what you have over there is you have Connor Stallions parked right in the ear of Jesse Mentor, the defensive coordinator, and the insinuation is they know pass is coming. Now, for the record, this next play resulted in an Ohio State touchdown. So if that was the case, it turned out that it didn't go Michigan's way. The game went Michigan's way. But this is hot Twitter evidence today. I'm being told this is evidence. This proves something. That doesn't prove anything. Nor does this picture prove anything. This is where the Michigan folks start to think I have their back. I'm just telling you the truth. What you see here, if you're listening on podcast, is Connor Stallion's hand holding a laminated sheet, and it quite literally has cartoon figures that represent different hand signals that could be being given. I have very little doubt what that is a guide for opposing teams' signals and an easily decipherable guide there on the sideline so they can know what's coming. I have no doubt about that. Just like I have no doubt the video we just saw shows the dude reading the opposing team's signals and helping the coordinator get the right play in, or at least trying to. I have no doubt about that. That is not the smoking gun you're looking for here. You're looking for the fact that that information was obtained through illegal channels. That's what you're looking for. That video doesn't show you any of that. That video doesn't show you anything more than any other staff does. And pretty much every major staff has got a guy parked on their sideline. You don't know their names right now, but pretty much every staff has someone over there. Georgia's got one, Bama's got one, Ohio State's got one. They all got them, and their job is to pick up signals, and their job is to gain a competitive advantage. I mean, this is not even the first time you guys have heard about this. I don't know if it made its way into the mainstream because, frankly, I can't remember which stories have and haven't broke. Clemson was notorious for this. When Brent Venables was at Clemson, everybody was paranoid about it. Now, what we didn't ever hear was Brent Venables bought tickets for 35 different games in 17 venues and obtained that information illegally. So my point is, you got to bring me that. Now, it may sound like I'm very cautious on this. I am very cautious on it because I've seen this happen before. I have seen there be an axe to grind against a person or a university. I have seen a lot of hatred towards a person or a university, and you just kind of hear what you want to hear, and then your mind puts the rest of the puzzle pieces together, and you crystallize worst case scenario for that hated entity in your mind. And so there are a lot of folks out there who have no doubt that Michigan is going to crater into the ground in the not too distant future. So I'm not there yet in terms of being sure. And I take this microphone, I take a fair amount of responsibility as to what I utter into it, believe it or not, because I know it resonates a little bit. And so I'm not going to be that guy tonight. Well, that's the part that I want to point out to you. Because that part where I'm saying I personally, like me sitting here personally, I haven't seen enough to determine that, hey, Michigan's screwed. That is taken to mean, well, he's carrying water for Michigan. I'm not at all. Here's the follow-up. Having said everything I just said, there is no way details are done emerging on this. No way. I've got several thoughts on it. First thing I think is I think they did it. That's the first thing I think. I don't have proof of it, though. I think they did it. Second thing is, You guys can hate on the Pete Thamels of the world all you want to. You can go back to like the Manti Te'o days and point out where he got a story wrong. I can point to 500 examples where he nailed one as well. So Pete Thamel's not the dude whose reputation or veracity of reporting you probably want to be going up against. And when I'm reading his work today, and he's saying the NCAA is being sent over an hour of film, specific surveillance footage of people in the seats that were purchased by Connor Stallions recording the opposing sidelines. When I hear that there are double-digit Big Ten member institutions cooperating and sending in evidence, I don't doubt that. And I think it's true. I think they did it. I think Michigan's going to be in a lot of trouble. I'm just telling you, on my desk right now, as we sit here on Tuesday night and it's 7:10, I hadn't seen that. So, I'm not stamping it because I'm not the one reporting it. I'm almost certain, though, what is being reported will be corroborated and backed up officially as part of the evidence they gather in this investigation. Sounds like that's going to ramp up a lot more next week. So I'm going to take a wait-and-see approach on that. But the crux of all this, if I'm a Michigan fan, I feel like the whole world's out to get me. They are. I feel like a lot of people have an axe to grind against me and my head coach. They do. You're not wrong about that. But that's not how you dismiss the claims. You dismiss the claims by proving they're false. I don't really care how many people hate you. I don't really care how many people have axes to grind. Is what they're saying true? That's all that matters. The government uses horrifically flawed people to turn state's evidence all the time. It doesn't matter if they're terrible. It doesn't matter if they themselves are criminals. It matters if what's coming out of their mouth is true. Oftentimes, those with axes to grind are the most motivated truth tellers. Not all the time, but sometimes that's the way it works. Another thing I think is it's become pretty popular on message boards the last few days to just assume that you know the source or the sourcing, maybe multiple sources that, for lack of a better term, ratted you out. I wouldn't be so sure about that. I've just watched this play out too many times in the past and then gotten privy on the back end to some information. Not in this case yet, but going off past history, I've been part on the front end of that widely held narrative of just assuming who's responsible for diming someone out. And then you get the curtain peeled back a couple of years later after it's died down and you find out, wow, I wasn't even close. The public wasn't even close on this. And this detail will never come out. I strongly suspect these details will never come out. And so it'll just widely be assumed that Ryan Day's been texting back and forth with reporters all day, and it'll just widely be assumed that Ohio State's at the center of this. I get why people think that. I can't prove you're wrong. You can't prove you're right, though. I don't think you can prove you're right either. Plausible deniability is a concept I think pretty much everyone gets. This is me turning the page for a second. Plausible deniability is that thing where if you're at the top of something and you want to make sure that you can reasonably and truthfully one day say, I didn't know, you make sure you have people underneath you who are handling the dirty work and who don't need to be in your ear every 5 minutes asking you for permission. Should I do this? Should I not do that? You got to have soldiers who carry out the game plan, sight unseen, questions unasked. Well, that is a concept as old as time. That's not something new that all of a sudden, if you're practicing, NCAA investigators run into and say, oh man, they had plausible deniability figured out. I guess Harbaugh didn't know. They got you nailed either way. If the reporting is true, they've got you nailed either way. Because either you did know and you lied, or you didn't know and you're doing a terrible job of leading a program. Because if you didn't know, that means you didn't know what your own staff was doing. They invented that whole lack of institutional control thing to kind of circumvent you thinking you had them gamed with plausible deniability. So thus far, all of this is still behind closed doors. Evidence is being presented. I, as of this moment, have not personally seen anything that makes me think hammers dropping on Michigan tomorrow. I have, right along with you, read a lot of things that indicate it could drop on them. My advice to a Michigan fan, as hard as this may be, is just shift into last dance mode. Just shift into enjoying the heck out of this season. You probably got the best team in the country right now. You're the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. You got the Heisman favorite. I would let 2024 be a cliff that I can't even see over right now. I'm 2023, just like Bulls fans were in 97 or 98, and then we'll worry about the future when it comes. But everyone's talking about the NCAA with Michigan right now. And I'm telling you, that's in the distance. That's 2024 at the earliest before you ever get any punishment from them. If you do, I'd be way more concerned with what two other entities do to me. My own conference, because there are mechanisms that they can use to act on swiftly if need be. And number two, what's the College Football Playoff Committee going to have to say about this? That's an angle I thought of as soon as I started reading this story. NCAA moves like molasses in December. I'm not worried about them. That'll be a long way down the road. But the College Football Playoff Committee is about to unveil their initial rankings next week, I think. Are they going to use this as part of their criteria? Are they going to bake that in? I'm sure they've got language loose enough to where if they really wanted to, they could hold this against Michigan. Because these people are like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall to begin with. So there will be methodology at their disposal should they choose to punish Michigan for this, where I think they could. Will they? It'd be unprecedented, obviously. But what is that committee? That committee is just a bunch of folks from different colleges all around the country. You think there may be some anti-Michigan bias there? You think there may be some motivated axe grinders in that room? That would concern me. If I lived up there in Lansing, Michigan right now, that would concern me a lot more than the NCAA. Whew. So I say all that to say Thursday night, we could have a new plate full of information. But as for now, let's just be a little patient on it. Just because everyone's saying the same thing at the moment doesn't make that thing true. Or everyone could be saying the same thing because they've all zeroed in on it and they got the same reliable sources. Don't know, because it's played out both ways in the past. So we don't know. We'll see. I'm sorry if anyone wanted to tune in tonight and just see me burn a Wolverine mascot in effigy. No, maybe Thursday. Maybe. Permits pending. But we were not going to do that tonight because we don't have sufficient grounds with which to do that. I'm only halfway through this coffee, too. Long show still to go. All right, now, Tuesday night is prediction night here. And so we're going to do just that. Georgia, Florida, this Saturday, 3:30 Eastern kickoff, CBS game of the week in Jacksonville. We will be on hand. The Once Upon a Saturday tour is rolling down to Jacksonville. Well, first off, there's a beautiful T-shirt available in the Pate State store right now, patestatematerial.com, and it features this game. We make one shirt available per week, and then it's done. It's gone. So after this Saturday, you will not find that bad boy anymore. So patestatematerial.com is where you want to be. Colin, let's make an executive decision. All right? Let's start the individual video right here. And then I'll mention the T-shirt again on the back end so that it's double dipped on the YouTube channel. If you're watching live, ignore all this. I just had a 20-second meeting with Colin. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Sounds good. Georgia, Florida, this Saturday, 3:30 Eastern kickoff down there in Jacksonville. Once Upon a Saturday tour will be on hand. We'll be on the sideline for this one. I get the sense that there are some simplistic views forming on this game. Now, you know I don't take the Once Upon a Saturday tour to games that I expect to be a blowout. How do we get a close game here? Well, the simplistic view would lead you to believe that since Georgia barely beat Auburn with Brock Bowers, maybe, just maybe, they fall outright to Florida without Brock Bowers. That's the entire story around this game. What is Georgia like without big tight end there, number 19? What are they like without him? Who replaces Brock Bowers? Is it Oscar Delp? Is it Lawson Lucky? Hey, that's not where you look. I know those are the tight ends. That's not the answer to the question who replaces Brock Bowers. The answer is team-wide. A linebacker could step up. A strong safety could step up. A slot receiver could step up. The point is, collectively, that team has to elevate its game. And there are some position units on that team that have needed to elevate their game, even if Brock Bowers is still there, to win a championship and to maximize this team's potential, which I think is championship caliber. So it isn't limited to the tight end room. That's the first thing. A simplistic view number 2 on this game is it's all about Graham Mertz. If Florida's going to win, it's all about Graham Mertz. Well, I'm not so sure that's true either. I think about Graham Mertz being the starting quarterback there. I know he's the most important player on Florida's team. What's the rest of the offense around him going to allow him to do? Everyone's all high off that win over South Carolina on the road, which has to be calibrated, and you need to understand any Florida win on the road lately has been a big deal. So you may look at it and say, big deal. You beat South Carolina by 2. It is a big deal because it was in October and it was on the road, so it is a big deal. But paper pop time. Graham Mertz, 27 quarterback hurries in that game, albeit in a win. 4 sacks. Jacob Rudner over at Swamp 24/7 had some good literature on that game today to put it in the proper perspective. Georgia's 94th in sack rate nationally, defensively. So they haven't gotten after the quarterback and gotten him to the ground as much as they may like, but they are going to be able to affect him all afternoon Saturday, or at least I think they'll be able to. Now, over on the Georgia side, I got to think Kirby and his offensive staff went and watched that Kentucky-Florida game and have to be thinking to themselves, if Kentucky ran it for 9.1 yards per carry, surely our ground game can come alive here. I mean, Kentucky sliced Florida 9 ways from Saturday. Georgia, 5.1 yards per carry this year. That's top 25. That's 24th nationally. They got to be thinking to themselves, well, if Bowers is out, no need to take massive risk here. We'll just run the ball to win. I think a blind man can see that approach coming. If it works, it works, and that's the end of the preview. If it doesn't work, or if they have moderate success on the ground, well, then what you have to have is you have to have Carson Beck make good decisions. I mean, where does that get them, by the way? Even if they run the ball fairly well, what does Georgia set itself up like on third down consistently Saturday afternoon? Florida's defense is 10th in the country on third down. Florida's defense is 114th in the country in sacks. So, it doesn't sound like those two stats really mesh together very well. What that says to me is when I get to third down, if I'm Mike Bobo, I'm not hesitating to let Carson Beck make some decisions back there. I'm not hesitating to throw the ball. They haven't gotten home enough. Florida hasn't gotten home enough. There is no reason for me to think all of a sudden their defense and pass rush will find itself against me. I'm Georgia. I got a good offensive line. I've recruited very well, and I trust my guys. And my quarterback, although he's a first-year starter, is more than halfway through the season, coming out of the bye week now. This is the Florida game. We can't hide our quarterback. Yet again, it comes down to a quarterback having to make plays to win a game. Biggest area that has to flip here, if we're going to see an upset, biggest area that has to flip, Florida's offense is 109th in the country on third down conversion rate. Georgia is the best defense in America on third down. So that's what has happened. Is it what will happen? Let's take a look at what Vegas thinks. FanDuel currently, Georgia minus 14.5. FanDuel currently over under 47.5 on this game. But the Pate State model has Georgia minus 15. So we kind of agree. Pretty much think the number is spot on. I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to take Georgia to win. I think Florida will have a very inspired effort here. And I was at the Auburn game, and I saw Georgia struggle to win, much less pull away. And that's away from home. This is technically away from home. It's a 50-50 crowd split down there. I think Florida's going to put up enough of a fight where they're in this game. And so I'm going to take Florida to cover. I will take Georgia to win. Florida plus 14.5 over there at FanDuel is what I will take, though. And we will be on hand to witness all the festivities. We got a big production down there this week. We're taking Uncle Dennis. Emily Proud is joining the Once Upon a Saturday Tour. Homestead of Thunkit, 2 apostrophes in Homestead of. And a crew and cast of thousands. And remember now, some of you hit me up Sunday night when we announced this destination. Hey, where's the T-shirt? Where's the T-shirt? Well, we put it in the store Monday morning. So PateStateMaterial.com, it has the shirt there now in all of its glory. And I'm telling you this twice because it's gone after Saturday. Also, upon popular demand, we have added hats and the first ever Pate State hoodie in the Pate State store too. And those things feel like a furnace when you put them on. I've never had heat retained like I've had when I put one of those things on. I'm not typically a hoodie guy, but number one, since it had my own branding on it, and number two, since it was a little chilly in my apartment the other day because the heat stopped working, poverty vibes, I put it on. Kept me warm. Can keep you warm as well. patestatematerial.com. We had someone concerned the other day. We here at Pate State have a very familial vibe. And, you know, as one of us hurt, we all hurt. As one of us celebrate, we all celebrate. And as one of us shop at Academy in Sports and Outdoors, we all shop there. And so one of you saw FanDuel come on board the other day and you said, wait a second, is this it for Academy? No, it's not it for Academy. Not only totally different lanes, those are totally different interstates. Academy is our ride or die. Look at us. We're just linked arm in arm with them. And they pretty much have everything you need. I don't even care what your tailgate scene looks like. I know they've got you covered. I know they got your grill if you need that. I know they got your canopy if you need that. I know they have a $10,000 gift card they're ready to give one of you and SEC championship game tickets. Please pay attention. Listen to how serious that paper pop is. Enter for your chance to win a $10,000 Academy gift card. The ones I give away are $20,000, I think. $10,000 is wild. What does that card look like, by the way? Plus SEC championship game tickets. Just sign into the Academy app. That's all you have to do. Sweepstakes runs through November 18th. No purchase necessary. Jesse, I didn't write it down, so let's try and remember. This is not available in New York, Hawaii, Alaska, or California. Is that right? Nailed it. You can find the full rules at academy.com/official rules. Look at that. Nothing but good news. Nothing but good news. And you still don't have to pay a dime for the show. Let's move on. We got more games to predict. I told you earlier tonight, there's a story that has nothing to do with Michigan, just bubbling beneath the surface. It's like right under our noses. And I don't think enough people are taking notice, so we're going to talk about it later tonight. But in the meantime, I'll go ahead and finish this coffee. Yep, she's done. And Ohio State plays Wisconsin Saturday. This game looked a lot bigger preseason than it does now, but the model in Vegas way detached on this one. So it bears breaking down. This is a Saturday, 7:30 Eastern kickoff on NBC. There is an age-old internet philosophy when it comes to college football. This philosophy was born on message boards. And the philosophy is, if fan bases aren't focused, there's a concern that the team may not be focused. Now, the general public has always been sharply divided on this. Some people think if your local message board isn't focused on your upcoming opponent, that's just a reflection of how the entire program feels. And then there are other people who think, no, a football player thinks totally different than fans do. Well, I don't really have a strong feel on this either way, but I hope the latter is right when it comes to Ohio State, because I took it upon myself to go over to bucknuts.com earlier today, and I counted 13 threads about the Michigan investigation and 1 about Wisconsin. You people better get your minds right. Or, conversely, what you think has no bearing on the game whatsoever, and you can talk amongst yourselves about whatever you want. I got some trivia, paper-popping trivia. It's very simple. Who's the starting quarterback for Wisconsin? Jeopardy music? Jeopardy music? Exactly. It's Braden Locke. What? That's not Tanner Mordecai. No, friend. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Tanner Mordecai is out with a hand injury, I believe. Injury of some kind. And Braden Locke is in. Breydyn. And I don't know, country of origin. Can I use it in a sentence? I don't know. There is an E on the end of his last name, Jesse? Okay, so we had this wrong in our pre-show meeting. This is the attention to detail that you have come to expect from the kind of show that told you, for example, Alabama already has a conference loss the other day, even though they don't. Yes, I got corrected on that, so my apologies. Anyway, this is a redshirt freshman, Braden Locke. He is a former 3-star, number 25 quarterback in the 2022 cycle. Right on brand. He's already transferred once from Mississippi State to Wisconsin. Now, he started against Illinois. That's the last game they played. 21 of 41, 2 touchdowns, 240 yards passing, and they came from behind. I think they were down 21-7. So they came back. They were on the Ramen Noodle Express because all we do is bet backup quarterbacks. Having said all that, this is a Braylon Allen game. Running back there for Wisconsin, he needs to shine. He's averaged 5.9 yards per carry this year. He's second in the Big Ten in rush yards per game. He's got to get it done Saturday. Everybody knows that. Ohio State can't be loose. That's what they can't be. They can be tight. I don't really even care if Ohio State plays tight. They can't be loose. Because turnovers, shaved possessions on one end, added possessions on the other end, hidden yardage, special teams nonsense. That's how Wisconsin wins this thing. You know how else they win it? Luke Fickell. That's how else they win it. He knows a thing or 10 about Ohio State. So the looser you are, the longer you let them hang around. It's their home stadium. We'll see. I'll show you what the model thinks in a second. I was going to spoil it there. Ohio State needs to find its ground game, though. Speaking of which units need to take over, what if I told you Ohio State's 101st in the country in rush yards per game? You'd probably tell me rush yards per game doesn't matter. When it's 101 in the country, it does a little bit. Now, Ryan Day says Travion Henderson, among several players they expect back this week. I think Burke they expect back. Egbuka they expect back. So it looks like they're getting closer to being full speed here. Wisconsin defensively is a team you can run on. 64th in the country in run yards per game given up. But Ohio State, man, 2.9 yards per carry. That's what they've averaged the last 4 games. But they're still undefeated. Got to pick it up. Still undefeated, though. Wisconsin's defense, 20th in points per game allowed. The pull-away potential here, I think, is low. Ohio State famously has already played Notre Dame and didn't score 20. They played Penn State last week. They scored 20. They, in those 2 games, have combined for 37 points, I think it was. So, I mean, they're averaging in the teens in those 2 games. Is this the kind where they're going to hang 40? I don't necessarily think so. And the Luke Fickell factor matters here. I can't quantify how much it matters. In fact, Colin, let's go ahead and show them what the model says. So the current FanDuel numbers on this game, you can get Ohio State minus 14.5 right now, and FanDuel also has the total at 43.5. Again, the implied message there is we don't expect a lot of scoring. So when the spread's Ohio State minus 14.5, what do we need here? What do we need? If that total is roughly accurate, man, if I get 13, if I get 17 out of Wisconsin, I got a real shot here. And the model thinks it's going to happen. In fact, the model has Ohio State winning by just 9. And so I'm looking at this, and I also know how distracted things have potentially been up there this week. And I know it's a letdown spot. Ohio State just played Penn State. Wisconsin is looking to salvage a season at this point. I think Wisconsin's going to find a way to hang around as well. And so I'm going to take Ohio State to win. I'm going to take Wisconsin to cover. And people will probably speak ill of Ohio State, and I'll probably be sitting here Sunday saying, nope, survive in advance. That's all you need to do. And that'll be that. Hey, there's that post that I was looking for in the A block, man. Oh, well, so many good things on here. Oh, yeah, there's one thing I forgot to ask about the Michigan segment. Where did the money to purchase those tickets come from? Because that dude's making $55,000 a year, and while I'll grant you that's more than I made in the Fabric Warehouse back in the day, that ain't enough to be buying tickets at 35 different games and 17 different venues on the 40-yard line. So, inquiring minds would like to know. They're watching us in Shady Valley, Tennessee, Hughesville, Maryland, and I believe in my own handwriting, this says Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. Thank you guys so much. Not sure who you guys play Saturday. Maybe an LSU transplant, but thank you so much. Oh, the JP poll kind of snuck up on us here. Wow. Huh. The Michigan investigation has even overshadowed the JP poll. Once thought impossible on Tuesday nights in the fall, but that's where we are in this country now. Whew. Got some new arrivals in the poll this week. All right, here we go, Colin. The JP poll is here. Not a ranking, of course, just a power rating. I would like to position these teams in the order that the model would predict them to be favored on a neutral field. Nothing more, nothing less. If you don't get it at this point, it's not worth explaining. Let's start at number 25 through 21. Florida is still where they were last week. Arizona, it's a streak now. Jed Fish and Company, they are rated number 24. But you know what I'm happy about? I almost want to golf clap it a little bit. The model was very slow to come around on Missouri. But finally, Missouri is power rated. Number 23, no less. Whomst amongst us would have thought this late in the year, Missouri and USC would be right next to each other. And both of them would be behind Miami. I don't know. So that's where we are 23 through 21. Now, I have some explaining to do, but first, you notice conspicuous in their absence there, no TCU. No TCU. Yes, the number 23 team in the country last week got predictably boat raced by Kansas State. So TCU was the wart. It was the fly in the model's ointment this year. TCU's gone. We'll see you all in 2024. Let's keep it moving. North Carolina dropped to 20. Candidly, now I don't like to air the dirty laundry out here between me and the model. I think North Carolina dropped too far. North Carolina dropped 3.75 raw points, and that was good to drop them from 11 to 20. I think it's a little harsh, so I would have North Carolina up there around 14 or 15. That's just me personally. I'm not a computer. Kansas State continues to surge. Kansas State has added 6 points of value on their power rating over the last 2 weeks. They were not rated last week, which they should have been. The whole TCU Kansas State conundrum was well chronicled on this show. And Kansas State is number 17 now. UCLA is 16. I guess I should have read these. So 20 to 16. North Carolina, Utah, Ole Miss, Kansas State, UCLA. I got a quick note from the model. It would favor UCLA by 2.1 points on a neutral field against USC right now. There are 5.85 points that separate number 10 to number 21. So before you talk about how wide the gap is, number 11 should be number 14, number 16 should be 12. It's a minuscule difference. Let's keep it rolling, Colin. 15 to 11, A&M, Oregon State, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Penn State. Didn't think Penn State would drop much. They didn't. In fact, I think they remained unchanged. I think there was some movement up ahead of them. The model's still really high. Well, the model is higher on A&M and Tennessee, for that matter, than maybe the AP is. I don't know. I haven't looked at the AP all week. Like I swear to you, I have not seen it once. I would imagine A&M's not ranked, but could be wrong. You will see. Go look at Bill Connolly's numbers. I haven't seen those today. I guarantee he's got A&M a lot higher. It's just the way that neutral field favorability would work. It's not a ranking. I wouldn't have A&M ranked 15. They don't deserve to be ranked 15. Move it right along. We've got some serious movement here. Serious movement. So let me read 10 to 6. Oklahoma didn't move a whole lot. We didn't need to move them because we didn't have them as high as everyone else did to begin with. Washington, number 9, didn't move them hardly at all. We didn't need to. We already had them a little bit lower than folks did to begin with. LSU has surged. I'll get back to them in a second. They're at 8. Texas is at 7. That is with Quinn Ewers. We have not removed Ewers because it's not a season-ending injury. So it's a case-by-case, week-by-week thing with how we will grade a game. But we still got Texas at 7. But how about Florida State? You guys said the model was a little bit off on Florida State. The model listened, and it heard you. It said, you know what? You're right. I'm wrong. That's what it said. It's got Florida State 6 now. Back to LSU at number 8 for a second. I don't know what to say. It's been higher on LSU for a while than the AP has, but LSU at 8 right now. Now, to be very, very clear, what the model is telling you is it would favor LSU on a neutral field against Oklahoma tomorrow, which doesn't compute. One of them's got 2 losses. One of them's undefeated. I know. You don't have to tell me. I know. But I also think it's on to something there. Now, rankings-wise, LSU should never be ahead of Oklahoma right now. But power rating-wise, that's interesting. LSU, defensively, they are what they are. But offensively, they also are what they are. All right, let's move it on. I'm very interested to see, because LSU's playing Bama in 2 weeks. And sneaking suspicion we'll have a good vantage point for that game. Number 5 through number 1 is Bama 5, Oregon 4, Georgia 3, Ohio State 2, Michigan 1. So we've got Michigan, Ohio State 1-2. We have got Bama number 5. I ran the numbers. We would favor Michigan by 5 against Alabama on a neutral field right now. That's the gap between 1 and 5. I think we'd take a fair amount of Bama action on that if we put that point spread out. That's my inclination. And so, what are our thoughts here? My thoughts are I think North Carolina's too low. I'm fascinated by LSU because here's what could happen. What could happen is LSU goes to Bama. Let me explain power rating world to you, okay? Let's just say this is right. For the sake of argument, let's say universal truth is known and this is right. LSU at 8, Bama 5. Okay, let's say LSU goes to Bama and they lose 27-24. They could end up climbing 1 or 2 spots more, being a 3-loss team. Because the implication there, according to these numbers, is they should lose to Alabama. You don't punish teams when they do what the model says they should do. The model won't, at least. And that'll really throw folks for a loop. Like if we had 3-loss LSU above undefeated Oklahoma, that would throw people for a loop. But I think also, if you were to get odds makers on the record right now, and they gave you all kinds of hypothetical lines, I think some of those would throw you for a loop. You know, you would think to yourself, there's no way. And then Vegas is like, no, this is what this line would be actually if we put it out right now. It would shock people. I don't know why, but it would shock people. So there you go. Michigan number 1 still in the JP poll. FSU, big climber, up to number 6. And Washington and Oklahoma there at 9 and 10. It's important to note, the model itself has nothing to do with FanDuel. Now, all the numbers we're showing on the show now do have something to do with FanDuel. I mentioned the other day, we have clasped hands with FanDuel, talked to them for like half a year, and we came to an agreement on some working conditions, and now we got a great partnership with them. All of our odds are provided by FanDuel, and therefore I'm proud to partner with them. But right now, just for those of you who always DM me, hey, where should I do this? How should I do that? The answer is responsibly, or don't do it at all. That's the answer. With money you can afford to lose. That's the other part of that answer. But you can get $200 in bonus bets right now, guaranteed, when you place a $5 bet. We call that free money. So I'm always a big fan of that. That's why I'm presenting it to you. You can do many different things. I do the straight bets, you know that. I give them away on the Ramen Noodle Express. We do it on Friday Night Lines. But go to FanDuel.com/CFB promotion. If you don't feel like typing that, I got a link right here in the YouTube description. It's right there. And you can go over there and you can just wager at your leisure or just look around for a little while. That's what I tell you to do at Academy. You just want to walk in Academy and look around. It's cool in there as well. If you don't ever intend on betting a dime in your life, it's very fascinating to look at odds and how they work, especially live odds in real time. If you don't wager, I would assume you don't know about live betting. Look at it. It's crazy. It's wild. It may intimidate you a little bit, but good people at FanDuel. Really happy to be partnering with them. They watch the show. That's what stood out when we met with them. They watch the show. Even Friday Night Lines, they watch. So we are excited for that. I'm excited for Oregon, Utah. I may end up best betting this game. Oregon at Utah, Saturday, 3:30 Eastern time on Fox. College football playoff elimination game? I think so, although I don't like speaking of such things in October. Utah's got an 18-game home winning streak. 18. I was there for one of them when they played Florida this year. So I know all about this place. Now, also, I was at the Washington-Oregon game, so I've seen Oregon go on the road, hostile conditions, and while they lost, I thought they handled the environment about as well as they could. That Washington game, let me say this quietly so as not to upset my friends in the South, that Washington-Oregon game was the loudest game I've been to all year. Look at my phone. Okay, I guess no one heard that. Good. It was crazy. And so Oregon's not going to be shaken by the environment at Utah. They could be shaken by the team Utah puts on the field. So here's what Utah needs. The line on the game right now, 6.5. That's the FanDuel number, Oregon minus 6.5. Oregon's defense is top 15 statistically against the run. So you may think, what do you mean Utah needs that? Utah needs that not to be true. Yes, that's correct. They need it not to be true. So I told producer Jesse, poke holes in this. Just completely illegitimize this stat. And I think he may have somewhat done it. So Oregon, yeah, it's true enough. They got a top 15 run defense. Utah needs that to be inflated. Utah needs to be able to run the ball here. And it may help to know that 5 of the 6 FBS teams Oregon has faced en route to posting that stat have been 100th or worse in rush yards per game. So, translation, because we probably churched that up a little bit too much, Oregon hadn't faced many teams that can run the ball worth a crap. And therefore, their defense looks really good. Now, it may just be really good, or maybe it be a little overinflated. Utah will find out for us one way or the other. And they better hope that's reality, because otherwise, this game sets up really well for Oregon. You got the possibility of running the ball on them. You got home field, and most of the other critical metrics lean Oregon. Oregon's offense is really good, and it may be slowed down. It won't be stopped. Utah just scored 34 against USC. So everybody remembers the last thing they saw. And my concern is folks think Utah's offense has found itself. No, it found USC. Everyone gets right against the USC. It's just like clockwork. Otherwise, point totals for Utah this year, and some of this wasn't even offensive points. 24, 20, 14, 7, and 34 against Cal. The 14 and 7 was UCLA and Oregon State. 7 of the 14 against UCLA were defensive. So they have scored a combined 14 offensive points against the two teams that profile most like Oregon. You're going to have to score way more than that Saturday. Home or away. Play it on Mars. You're going to have to score way more than that. And you got the 57th rated pass defense in the country. So Bo Nix, probably going to be able to do some work against you. They don't turn the ball over. At least they haven't. Oregon's lost 1 turnover all year. So they're not going to gift wrap it for you. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. FanDuel, I said, currently has Oregon minus 6.5. The over-under's 48.5. We think Oregon's going to win by more than 1 possession. And I can't disagree with the model. Now, we took Utah to win outright last week. So I've gotten off the proverbial schneid when it comes to being cursed picking Utah games. So I'm just going to assume I'm going to be right about every Utah game from here until eternity. And I'm going to go against them this week. It's not a spot that's been kind to me, but I'm going to go against them. And I'm going to go Oregon to win. I'm going to go Oregon to cover. And we're going to look very, very strongly at that as a best bet, waiting to hear one thing about that game later in the week. And then we will probably move on that. We'll have probably several best bets Thursday. And, of course, Friday Night Lines at Late Kick Josh on Instagram is where you want to be for the final word. Do I dare... Colin and Jesse, do I dare take this empty cup of coffee, put it down here, not a lot of room, and then do I mix the choice liquid in the chalice with coffee? I think the answer is yes, clearly. And we just apologize to our tummy later. We had a really good pair of Twitter questions today, and I want to get to both of them right now. Seth from Alex City, Alabama, hit us up and said, which teams do you think could create chaos at the end of the year? Chaos teams, Seth wants to know about. Kansas State's one. Look at that. It wasn't planned that I took a sip of purple liquid right before mentioning the Wildcats, but I did take a sip of purple liquid right before mentioning the Wildcats. That's an ignition team. We need to trademark that. Write that down, Jesse. Ignition teams. We talk about it every year. A little bit before Halloween, some team or teams that have been left for dead just find some magic combination of some sort of ingredients, or as you would call it in Manhattan, Kansas, Avery Johnson, and boom, just all of a sudden, different looking team. It's like you tried to crank the car 3 times in the morning and the engine didn't turn over, and the 4th try, after your car has lost to Missouri, after your car is inexplicably lost to Oklahoma State, it just cranks. And you smoke TCU after you beat Texas Tech on the road. And now, what do we have? Why is this a chaos team? Well, they play at Texas in 2 weeks, and Texas is not going to have Quinn Ewers. So, they could deal Texas their second conference loss. Texas would be, for all intents and purposes, out of the playoff picture. Kansas State would be very much alive in the Big 12 championship race. And what if Kansas State is the one who meets Oklahoma in Dallas? And what if they beat OU as well? That's what we call chaos. Kansas State, chaos agent out there in the Big 12. Next up, hop on the jet. I don't know if there's going to be a direct, but we're looking to go from Manhattan, Kansas to Coral Gables, Florida. Probably going to need some car service somewhere in between. 2 conference losses. What are we talking about Miami for? Well, number one, we're talking about them because they could be a resurgent team. They're not resurgent. People just got a little too down on them for our taste. That's why we picked them to beat Clemson outright. The other thing to keep in mind is the 2 losses is not the end of the world in the ACC right now, especially after North Carolina got beat the other night. You got 1 undefeated left. That's Florida State. Miami still plays them. Miami plays Louisville. That's one of the 1-loss teams. Miami could actually still be in the conference title picture, but also they could be in the kind of picture to where when they go to Tallahassee in about 3 weeks, maybe they're the ones who knock the Noles from the ranks of the unbeaten. I know that sounds crazy. It's not so crazy as to just write it off. And if they keep winning, like I said, they could creep into that conference title picture. What about Missouri? Freshly minted in the JP poll, Missouri is off this week. So no one's talking about them. But most people haven't been talking about them all year. You know who they play next? They play Georgia. What's Georgia doing this week? Oh, they play Florida, don't they? Rivalry game. Rivalry games actually aren't as unpredictable as people make them out to be. But the week after a rivalry game, especially when your opponent sat there and watched the rivalry game at home, that can be unpredictable. And so Missouri gets to go test their mettle against Georgia, but then they play Tennessee the next week. So I'll give you a little chaos theory. Chaos would be if they beat Georgia, if they're the ones who take a nip out of Georgia, but then they lose to Tennessee. What has just happened? Well, number one, Missouri put Georgia on the hobble. They just took the crowbar to the shin, and Georgia's, and then Tennessee takes down Missouri, and all of a sudden, what are we looking at? We're looking at Georgia going to Neyland later in the year. I don't want to say crippled, because it has connotations, but they are severely hobbled, and Tennessee's right back in it, is the point. Tennessee needs Georgia to lose, or else it doesn't matter if they beat them by 500 into a coma. Georgia's still got a game on you. But if Georgia is already a 1-loss team and you don't lose again by the time they come up there, you could end up backing your way into Atlanta. Missouri could have a lot to say about that. And lastly, what about Oregon State? Oregon State's a good team, first off. And the last 2 weeks of the regular season, they play at Oregon. Oh, no. They play versus Washington and then at Oregon. I think that's the order. So you start doing your breathing exercises out there in the West Coast, and you start thinking about the curtain dropping on the Pac-12 as you know it. What if we have chaos on the way out the door? What if Oregon State either beats Washington or goes to Oregon and wins, or both? Either way, they're going to have a lot to say about how that Pac-12 championship picture pans out. And here's the disrespect, and I admit it's disrespectful. I'm sitting here talking about Oregon State like they're out of it, and they're just playing the role of spoiler. They got 1 conference loss. They're in it. If they won those games, it may be them that's going to Las Vegas. So, and by Las Vegas, I mean for the Pac-12 championship game. So, there is a lot left to be decided. There are chaos teams all over the country. I just named 4 of them. Chances are one of them that I gave no second thought to is going to be the one who actually blows the entire thing up. All right, I told you about 50 some odd minutes ago, there was a big story that was happening, and it wasn't the Michigan story. And I am a man of my word. So I'm going to deliver right after a sip of the purple liquid here. Appreciate you guys watching live also. Make sure you hit the like button, because less than a fifth of you have. And I cannot keep feeding Jesse and Colin and Bradley with those kinds of numbers. I can't. That's a lie. Our numbers are really good, and I appreciate it. Keep them good. Subscribe to the podcast out there also, if you haven't. We got like 10,000 new listeners a month, so make sure you're subscribing as you walk in, especially since it's free. That's the way you keep it free. You subscribe. Let's see. Sam hit us up from Boulder, Colorado. He said, what do you think maybe is the story of this year's college football season that no one is talking about? Brilliant question. And although it comes from Boulder, the answer is not Deion Sanders. It's not Colorado. There is a knockdown, drag-out recruiting war underway in the Sunshine State. But it's not between Ohio State and Alabama and Clemson. It's not Georgia. No, it's Florida versus Miami versus Florida State. And if you're new to college football, you may say, duh. No, it's not duh anything. They have leaked talent out of that state forever. It's been the key story in this sport. And I have beat the drum to death. We've had to replace the heads on the drum. I beat it so much that this is how you recalibrate the entire talent landscape. You keep in-state talent home in Florida. So anyway, you heard me say that a long time ago. Well, here we go. Paper pop time. The 2024 recruiting cycle. Current class rankings. Florida number 3. Florida State number 4. Miami number 10. They are rolling down there. Rewind 2 years ago. Take the top 30 kids in that state. 8 of them stayed home. 8 of them stayed in state. And I ran the numbers, and that means 22 did not. As of right now, in the 2024 cycle, granted, we still got a ways to go. As of right now, 15 of the top 30 in-state kids are committed to an in-state school, and 4 are uncommitted, and 2 of those are crystal balled into the state of Florida somewhere. So we'll have well over 50% of those kids staying home. 2 years ago, it was 8 of the top 30. All 3 of these programs are trending up over the last 3 years in recruiting. It's not just a one-year aberration. This is a really big story. I don't care if you have nothing to do with the state of Florida or the SEC or the ACC. This is a big story if you're a Minnesota fan. It's a big story if you're a Cal fan. And here's why. The single biggest contributor that's been overlooked that created the super roster and the super team was not the playoff. That was a lie they told you to get you to support playoff expansion. It was never that. It was that the in-state schools in Florida and to a certain degree Texas and California were bad and their talent left home. But it didn't disperse itself evenly all over the country. Alabama loaded up. Ohio State loaded up. Clemson loaded up. Georgia loaded up. And lo and behold, they're dominating the college football playoff. And I got simpletons out there telling me, we've got to change the structure. No, you don't. You don't have to change anything. Hey, we still got a 4-team playoff this year. My, how the tables have turned, or my, how the turntables. What's changed? Well, I'll tell you what started to change. What started to change is a few of those elite players per cycle that would have gone to Columbus or Clemson or Tuscaloosa have gone to Tallahassee or Gainesville or Coral Gables. Now, that's in its infancy with these current staffs. That's going to continue trending that way. And what does it do? It doesn't knock Georgia or Alabama from the ranks of being elite. It just shaves the top of the roster a little bit. That's all you need. You didn't need to take the knees out of Ohio State or Clemson. You just needed to shave the tops of those rosters. 1 or 2 5-stars per team, per cycle from Belle Glade or from Ocala who were leaving the state. They need to stay home, and you would be stunned at how much difference that made. I have told you that a million times. Well, it's happening now. It's happening. You never needed playoff expansion. You got it anyway. You didn't need it. What you needed is you needed Mario doing what he's doing down there. You need Mike Norvell and Billy Napier doing what they're doing. Ultimately, they have to win, and that's what will turn the wave into a tidal wave, into a tsunami, and we're all ocean experts. We understand what happens there, but it's not happening in a vacuum. It's also happening in Texas. A&M's recruiting at a really high level. Texas is recruiting at a really high level. So 2 of those 3 states now are playing their part in keeping enough of their talent home to where if you're a Penn State fan, you're saying, well, big deal. I wasn't getting those players anyway. That's true, maybe, but what if Ohio State doesn't get them as much? Or if you're an Arkansas fan, well, we weren't getting those elite kids anyway. What if Alabama doesn't get them as frequently or as easily? It's a really big story. This is how you even out, this is how you inject parity into college football. That's how you do it. You're never going to inject the kind of parity that you think you're going to inject by expanding your playoff. It's a fool's errand to think otherwise. That's not the key. It never has been. The key is, has, and always will be in this sport, talent distribution. And the portal is addressing this because you can't just freeze your roster for a 4-year stretch, but also in-state schools doing their job in state. That's another really big factor to monitor here. Now, here's what sucks for me. What sucks for me is I know this was the key all along. And now that these in-state schools in Texas are keeping a larger chunk of their talent home, and the schools in Florida ditto, at the same time as the playoff expanding, the expanded playoff, mark my words, is going to end up getting credit for a lot of the competitive balance, and it has little, if nothing, to do with what's actually happening. Or put another way, you could keep this thing at 4 teams for the next decade, and you would still see an inversion at the top like we're getting ready to see, and in some cases we're already seeing it. The natural order of things wasn't going to let those schools dominate for the next decade. But the natural order combined with added recruiting prowess at some of these big Florida institutions just kind of exclamates it. So I say all that to say, enjoy it, even if you think it has nothing to do with you, because it's a really big story. I got no added best bets tonight. We'll have several Thursday. Watching some injury concerns for some teams. Not huge news, but it would impact some games we want to move on. So make sure you're following Twitter and Instagram at LateKickJosh. That's it for tonight. Nice little compact hour-long show. Who knows what breaks between now and Thursday. For Director Colin, Producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great rest of your evening, and God bless.